Hello YouTube, my name is Isabella and today we're going to be doing a spoiler-free review for Crier's War by Nina Varela. So let's just jump into it. Crier's War focuses on two young female main characters on the opposite ends of a war. Years ago, humanity has been conquered by the beings they have created. They are made, they are autonomy. They are these advanced beings that are unlike humans. At the beginning of our story, Isla, the human, wants to get revenge on the people who conquered her people, and she thinks the best way to do that is to murder the king's daughter in revenge for her family being murdered. But to do that, she actually has to infiltrate the castle, and the best way to do that is to actually get close to Crier's side and then enact her revenge. Things clearly don't go as planned and things fall apart very quickly, and I had a really good time with this story and I'm excited to tell you why. Before I actually get into the review, this is a fantasy story. I don't know if I need to clarify that, but for my own stupid self, I thought this was sci-fi because everyone was talking about like scientific elements, so I just automatically assumed sci-fi. But no, it's fantasy with scientific elements, which is actually one of my favorite things. I love when science is used in fantasy. I love that. It is a sapphic book and everyone really loved this story, really hyped this book up, and I just love seeing sapphic YA fantasy in the world. So to actually get into the review, the world building in here is my least favorite and I think most lacking part of this entire story. There's an overuse of capitalization in here that just drives me bonkers. If you are a fantasy reader, I think you will have experienced it in one way or the other, where the author just capitalizes a bunch of words and then is like, yeah, world building because I have proper nouns. It was rough, especially in the beginning. There was just like a lot of info dumping, but you don't actually get the information. It's just dumping words on you and you're expected to understand. And that is my least favorite type of world building because I almost said it's uninspired, but that's dramatic. But it is a bit lazy. I also appreciated that there were histories in here. There is an over-reliance on flashbacks to describe and explain the histories, but they do inform the story and the world a bit better, so I can forgive it for that. Now, for the characters, however, I think they are the best part of this story, especially one of them. I will say that I think they are a little unbalanced. Crier is our maid being. She is not human, and her struggles are really well done. She's in a very unique and difficult position, and her trying to balance all of these things that she's discovering and how she doesn't believe the rhetoric of like her country and her father, the king, and her growth and understanding throughout the story, I think was just really interesting and well done. Isla, on the other hand, I think could have used a little bit more developing. I found her to be a bit one note. She was so focused on vengeance. I just wish there were a few more aspects to Isla that were actively developed. She does have a bit of growth and does change a little bit in here. I just would have liked more, especially because Crier's arc was so interesting that in comparison, she just feels a bit weaker. I do also think that the side characters are incredibly weak. Most of them are very, very, very underdeveloped. You never really get to know more than the base surface level towards them, and because of that you never really care for them or fear for them because you just don't get to know them. I do think our main villain here actually was pretty scary, pretty terrifying. His motivations are like insane and really hard to predict and understand. Because of that, he feels very unstable and he is intimidating, and I really liked the treatment of our villainous character. So the plot was a little bit basic, but it was very enjoyable, and I don't think that's like a knock against this. I did not need this plot to reinvent the wheel of fantasy, and it doesn't, and that's not a bad thing. And because it is a uprising sort of tale, it's very easy to root for our main characters. You want them to win, you want them to overthrow this terrible regime, and it just is a great way to root for these characters, even if sometimes you feel that they are a little underdeveloped. You're rooting for them to win, because then if not, the bad guys win, and that's never a good thing. The romance in here is a large part of the driving plot, and I liked it a lot, but I do think it could have been done a little bit better, in my opinion. I just would have liked a bit more of a gradual arc into feelings, because there's a weird trajectory actually with their romance. I appreciated a lot that they were actually enemies at the beginning. They are full-on enemies. None of this like, oh, they kind of don't like each other. No, they're enemies. They're on the opposite side of a war, the opposite side of like the spectrum of people, and for them to come together, it's like nuts. Thought it was a little too rushed. However, I am satisfied with the way the romance ends off, and I'm very excited to see how that all comes together in the sequel. There's also an added element of like a mystery-ish plot in here that I think really helps the story along. There are some things that need to be uncovered and revealed, and it adds a lot of tension and suspense to the story, because you genuinely fear for our two main characters at points in time. In terms of the writing, I am a little split on whether or not I like enjoyed it or not. It wasn't bad, but like I mentioned before, I did not like the world building and just the constant capitalization. The first 30-40 pages were rough just because there's a shitload of stuff dumped at you. I do think this was well paced and well timed. It is overall a fast story, but there are moments for our characters to like kind of sit with themselves and their feelings, and there are quiet character moments, which I always think are necessary. And I also did not like the way flashbacks were used in this story, because I thought the transition between them was incredibly clunky and it took me out of the story. The prose itself, however, I thought was okay. It didn't like stand out to me in any way, but it also doesn't stick out to me in a bad way. The actual writing in here I thought was mediocre. I'm sorry, that sounds really harsh, but you could tell the writing was a debut, and I would like to see her writing grow in the future. So overall, I did really enjoy Crier's War. I think this review came out a bit harsher than I intended. I ended up giving this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was pretty good. There are just some things in here that I think needed to be fixed for me to enjoy it a bit more, but I did still enjoy it, and I do still want to continue on and finish off the duology, which I think comes out in the fall of 2020. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of Crier's War. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye!